In this video, we're going to show you how to create your first building in the LandlordMax Cloud Edition. We've just created a new account, which means there's no data, and so when we first log in and are presented with the dashboard, we don't have a chart here because we have no accounting data entered. To start everything off, we should probably create a building, and to do that, we go to the top of the screen and click on the Buildings button. This brings us to the Buildings list. At this point, we have no buildings, and so we have an empty list. So the first thing we're going to do is create a building by clicking on the New button on the right side. The software will then ask us what type of building do we want to create. Do we want to create a single residence building or a multi-unit building? And the reason it does this is because it'll store different information and present us with different information based off the type of building we select. So to simplify things, I'm going to go with a single residence building as the first building we create. So we click OK, and we're presented with the form view. Every field in the form is optional. So I can, for example, enter in a name for the building, but I don't have to. If I don't put in a name, it'll take the address. So I'm going to show you that by just putting in an address and not a name. The name is especially handy when you're entering in apartment complexes, because it's very common to name an apartment complex. And also for a single residence, sometimes it's much handier to name them by description or something that you can easily find them. In any case, it's optional, and that's up to you if you want to use it. So in this case, I'm going to fill in some data here. So we're putting in information, and again, every single field is optional. Now the first thing you'll notice is that there's no tenants. That's because we don't have a tenant. You cannot type in a tenant because you have to create the tenant underneath the people and tenants view. You can type the name of the tenant here and it'll automatically select that tenant, but if you have no tenants, it won't let you do that. You'll just be typing in for nothing. And again, all information is optional. Now we go to the status. The status is, what's the status of this building? Is it a current building? Which in our case it is. You could have sold the building. You could have a potential building you're looking forwards to purchasing, a building that you had before but you're no longer interested, all kinds of information. And then we have the classified ad. In this case, I'm going to leave it blank just to move forward and click on the Save button. The Save button brings us to the form view, to the data view, which shows us all the information about the building. Now, if I scroll down, I'm going to see a bunch of plus buttons here with a section. And these are all the different data linked to the building. So if I was to create accounting entries in the accounting section up here, these would appear here as well. I can click on the plus and see all the data for that section. So in this case, I would see all the accounting entries. Since this is a new building, there's no accounting data. I can create a new accounting entry here. I can view them. I can pay partial payments to an existing accounting entry and so on. I can filter the data. I can look at my appliances. I can store all my documents here. So if I click on the plus, I can upload documents. I can create them. I can do any kind of information I want. I can add my insurance. I can link a landlord, but I would first have to create the landlord here. But then I can link them. I can add mortgages. I can add notes. I can upload pictures if I want to, and so on, vendors, work orders, and what have you. Now, if I go back to the list view to show all the list of the buildings, here's my building. I can right click here and select what fields I want. So if I want to see the city, I can click there and there's the city. I can remove that field. I can move things around. So if I want the type to be first, I can expand the widths. I can do anything I want. Not only that, but I can double click on here and edit entries that are applicable. So in this case, maybe I want to call it Main Drive instead of Main Street, and I click on Save and the data has been changed. I can also edit it by clicking on the edit view here, and I could bring it back to street. And I click on Save and scroll down. Both options are available, and when I bring back the list, you can see it's been changed again. In this case, since it's a single residence building, it's only got one unit, and so all the information is there. Now that we've created our first single residence building, I'm going to create our first multi-unit building, such as an apartment complex, a mobile park, and so on. So I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to select multi-unit building. And similar to the previous, it has the same number of information, has forms, fields. So I'm going to create it, say, well-being apartments. And I'm going to put the address as 555 Bank Street. And I'll say in this case, it will be in Dallas, Texas, United States. I'll leave the postal code empty and I will continue on, and I'll leave everything else the same. Now you'll notice right away that the classified add is missing. That's because a classified add is not applicable to a multi-unit building. It's applicable to the individual units within the building. So we're going to click on Save. And you'll also find that some of the panels here are the same, but some are different. One of the big ones you'll see that's changed is that we have tenants. Instead of having a single tenant at the top, we have a list of tenants, right? One for each building. We have past tenants, we have so on, but we also have units here. So I'm going to close this, and I can create new units. So let's say I want to create unit 1. We're going to call it 1A. And at this point I still have no tenant. I'm going to say it's a 1,200 foot unit. I can put the description, and here's our classified add. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to create another new unit. I'm going to call this 2A. And I'm going to put, it's 1,000 square feet. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to go back to the building by clicking on the button on the right, top right. So if I go back to the building and I scroll down to units, you can see that I now have 2 units. I can now also filter. So if I want to find all units that have 1,000 square feet, I can just type in 1,000, and there it'll appear. I can remove the filter, and you'll see all the units. I can go back to the list and do the same thing here. I can say I just want to see well-being apartments. So I just type in well-being, and I'm limited to only that. I can remove that, and I see everything. And similarly, when I go back in here, in View, and I go to the unit, just like every other screen, I can also double-click and change the data here too as well, and make them both a 1,000 square foot unit. So there's a lot of capabilities, and that's how you create your first unit, your first 2 buildings. The next video is going to cover how to create your first tenant and link it to the building.